So in the previous lesson, we created a symbol, which is what we need to create in order to animate with Flash. And now in this lesson, we're actually going to animate our symbol. We need to take a moment, though, and talk about what is the metaphor, to use a computer science industry term, of the program. What situation are we trying to recreate in Flash? In Flash, we're creating something that's something like an old-style, large-scale animation studio. What you would have in a situation like that is different hierarchies of workers. You would have your lead animators who would be in charge of what a cartoon character might look like. They would draw what are known as keyframes, which would be two endpoints of a particular piece of animated motion. And then it would be left to lower-level workers called in-betweeners to create all the almost identical drawings that would take you from one keyframe to another. In the Flash program, you are the lead animator. You can decide what your symbols look like and where they're supposed to be in specific keyframes of the movie. And then you can have Flash act as the low-level in-betweener doing the grunt work of creating all the in-between drawings that actually carry out your animation. Flash does this using something called a tween, which is really just a continuous animated motion. So what we're going to do now here is we are going to create a tween. I'm going to go up to the Insert menu up at the top of the program window here, and I see right here it says Motion Tween. Now, something changed down here at the bottom of the screen in my timeline. What it used to be is one little frame here. There was a little rectangle here, and you'll see that it has a dot in it. That is what makes that frame a keyframe. A keyframe dictates what things look like for all the non-keyframes that follow it. We also see that this rectangle extended out to about the 24 frame mark. You might remember that in our movie we're working with 24 frames per second. Actually, right down at the bottom of the timeline it shows us our frame rate. So what we're looking at is 24 frames, each of which has a picture of this star in it. This red item here in the timeline is called the playhead, or playback head. And what we can do is we can use it to view any frame in our movie. And I can slide it along the timeline right here. Now, right now our movie is not particularly interesting because it just consists of a modified rectangle sitting there on stage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the playhead at the very last frame here. And I'm going to select my symbol, or symbol instance, I should say, and I'm going to move it to a different part of the screen. Now, what happened here is that we ended up with creating what's called a tween. This green dotted line here is what's called a motion guide. There are 24 dots along the length of the motion guide, each one showing us where our shape is at a different part of the animation. Now, you saw me move the playback head back and forth across my timeline here, and nothing really changed. But now, when I move it, what I'm seeing is all the different intermediate frames. Flash saw that in this keyframe over here, in frame 1, the rectangle was in the upper left area of my stage. And once I moved it in frame 24, it created a new keyframe here, where the rectangle is in the lower right-hand part of the stage. And Flash did the work of creating a drawing in each of these intermediate frames, showing the rectangle in a slightly different position. So if I move the playhead back to the top here, I can drag it back and forth and kind of get a sense of what's going on here. But if I want to see what it looks like when it's actually going to get played, I can put the playback head right at frame 1 here. I can go up to the Control menu and choose Play. And I see a keyboard shortcut symbol. That's my Enter key. So anytime I want to just get a quick look at what my movie looks like, I can hit the Enter key and it will play back the movie from the beginning. So at 24 frames per second, this is what my rectangle looks like as it moves across the screen. If I hit the Enter key, I can see it again. So in this tween, we have our star rectangle moving from this one keyframe up here on the left to this keyframe down here, in a straight line. But it doesn't have to be a straight line because we have this item called the motion guide. What I can do with the motion guide is if I'm using my selection tool, and again the selection tool is at the top of the toolbox, keyboard shortcut V, and I move it toward my motion guide, the motion guide is really just another shape on screen in a way, and I can manipulate it the same way that I manipulated the edges of my rectangle after I put it on the screen. I can take the motion guide and bend it so that it's now a curved line, and we see that the dots that represent where our symbol instance will be during each frame have changed location, and Flash has gone to the trouble of redrawing each of those intermediate frames to show the new motion of our shape. So I'm going to go again to the Control menu, choose Play, and I can see my shape moving along the new path. If I hit Enter, I can take another look at it again. In a future lesson, we'll take a look at a section called the Motion Editor, where we can have even more control over our motion guide and the kind of path that our symbol instances can follow.